This is a pilcrow. They crop up with surprising frequency, dotted about websites with a typographic bend, for instance, or teaming up with a section symbol in legal documents to form picturesque arrangements, such as paragraph 3, section 7. The pilcrow also appears in Microsoft Word, where it adorns a button that reveals hidden characters, such as spaces and carriage returns. For all this quiet ubiquity, the pilcrow gets short shrift in books on typography and punctuation. Take the trouble to look it up, and in most cases the humble pilcrow warrants only a few lines. Dismissed briskly as a paragraph mark that is only appropriate when brevity is important. More generous definitions might run to mentioning that it has fallen out of common use and that it is sometimes used to indicate a footnote. No mention of where its reverse P shape comes from, or its name. For the pilcrow, this is as good as it gets. This is a crying shame. The pilcrow is not a mere typographic curiosity, useful only for leveling up a coffee table book on graphic design or pointing the way to a paragraph in a mortgage deed, but a living character, with its roots in the earliest days of punctuation. Born in ancient Rome, refined in medieval scriptoria, appropriated by England's most controversial modern typographer, and finally rehabilitated by the personal computer, the pilcrow is intertwined with the evolution of modern writing. It is the quintessential Shady character. The orthographic world of ancient Greece was a sparse old place. When reading a contemporary manuscript, a literate Greek of Homer's time would be faced with an unbroken stream of letters, all uppercase, because at that time there was no other case, with lines running alternately left to right and then right to left across the page in the bustrophodon, or ox-turning style, after a farmer driving his oxen across a field. Perhaps most cruelly, the visual signposts of punctuation that today we take for granted were completely absent. It was the reader's unenviable lot to tease out words, clauses, and even sentences from this densely packed zigzag of characters. Despite some recent scholarly murmurs to the contrary, it's generally held that the painstaking task of interpreting a document like this would have been accomplished by reading it out aloud. At the time, the written word was very much an adjunct to spoken language, and silent reading was the exception rather than the rule. Physically pronouncing the syllables helped the practiced reader to decode and retain their meaning, and to discover the rhythms and cadences lurking in the unbroken text. Aristophanes of Byzantium, librarian of the great institution at Alexandria in the 3rd century before Christ, was the first to give readers some room to breathe, when he created a system of marks for augmenting texts written according to the rules of classic rhetoric. Statements were broken into clauses of varying length and meaning, and a skilled orator would pause and draw breath to emphasize each such unit. A skilled orator, not foofling around as much as I am doing now. Aristophanes defined a system of dots or distinctiones to indicate the points at which these pauses should take place. A boon for non-native readers, such as the Romans, who were attempting to decipher Greek literature. A century later, the grammarian Dionysius Trax described the system in his essay The Art of Grammar. There are 3 punctuation marks: the full or high dot, the intermediate or middle dot, and the subordinate or under dot. The full marks the completion of a sentence. The intermediate is used to show where the reader can take a breath, and the subordinate is used if the sentence is not yet complete but still lacks something. What's the difference between the full and the subordinate? It's one of duration. In the case of the full, the time interval is long, whereas it is without exceptions short for the subordinate. The so-called intermediate, subordinate and full dots, signaling short, medium and long pauses respectively, were placed after corresponding rhetorical units called the comma, colon and periodos. Though it took centuries for these marks of punctuation to crystallize into the visual forms we know today, their modern names are not so far removed: comma, colon and period.